Hello everyone, welcome to my channel and welcome to another tutorial. In today's episode, we're going to build a great application. So we're going to focus on Flutter and Node.js. So we're going to be building this full stack application that you guys are seeing in the screen right now. So I'm just going to preview the app really quick so you guys are able to peek at the features that we're going to work on today. So basically, we're going to do authentication with JSON Web Tokens. We're going to be able to post as well. So we're going to be able to create and then fetch the post from the server. We're going to store the images in AWS S3 to be more specific. We're going to be able to, as you guys see on the screen, to change the theme to white to black. And yeah, we're also going to use the image picker to post, to select images from iOS and Android. And as you guys are seeing right now, I'm just testing and creating a post really quick. So just so you guys see, as you guys see in the terminal in a couple of seconds, we're going to have a post created notification, and we just have to refresh since I'm using futures, I'm not using streams. And yeah, but it's basically the same logic. So you guys see the post right here. In today's tutorial, we're going to be using Flutter as the front end. We're going to use Node.js with Express for backend, and we're going to use AWS to store our files. Okay, so I guess that's everything as for introduction. If you like the tutorial, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let's start. So guys, we're going to open the terminal and we are going to create our Flutter project. So I'm just going to type Flutter create frontend, which is going to be our front end for the project. And yeah, let's open the folder with VS Code, and I'm just going to set up the project really quick. We have to get rid of these comments. I'm going to delete this class right here, and we are going to just type a widget in the meantime, a center widget, and it's going to have a text. Now we are going to build a project in our simulator, so just wait a little bit until the project is here. And now it's been loaded, so here we have it, our Hello World project. Now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to install all the dependencies that this project needs, which I'm just going to show you in screen all the packages that we are going to use. But just general, we're going to use HTTP to do a request over a network. We are going to use Flutter bloc for state management, the image picker to have access to files in iOS and Android. We're going to use a quotable because we're using Flutter bloc. We're going to use getit for dependency injection. Okay guys, so once we have installed our dependencies, we have to create the project folder structure. So we have to create a features folder. We're going to create a core and a config. Inside the features, we're going to have our features here, so which is going to be post, authentication, and feed. So yeah, so inside these folders we are also going to create other folders, which is the clean architecture way of dividing the data from the domain, from the business logic, and also the presentation, which is going to be the UI and our blocks. But yes, so let's just create our other folders inside these. So we're gonna have our entities or repository or use cases and more. Okay guys, so the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to start working with the use cases. So the first use case that we're going to build is going to be our login user use case. So first, create the class login use case, and we have to implement the class with its own parameters. So we have to create another class called login user params, and this is going to be an abstract class. And then we have to create a class that extends this class, and then is where we are going to specify our params. And this is a way to keep our logic separate. Okay, so we're going to inject this class every time that we are calling our function to login. Okay, you'll see right now how we do that in our use cases. So yes, so we have to do this first. So here we just have to finish here, and now we have to since we're using darts and we're gonna have either a type of failure or success. We have to create really quick a class called failure. So we're going to create the class right here, and it's going to extend a queryable. And once we create the class failure, let's create another class called server failure, and we're going to extend this class. Okay, guys, and we have to just override since we are using a queryable here. We can implement that in our original use case class. Okay, so we're gonna have those we're gonna have programs for use cases separate in our core folder. All right, guys, to keep our code clean and organized. So yes, now we here have to inject is going to be of a type string, and we also have our login params. Okay, now we can override our original class since we are implementing from the login params, okay? And right here, okay? The next step that we're going to do is we're going to create our repository, all right? So really quick, let's create an abstract out repo class. And the same here, we're going to start creating our function, and we're going to use our darts. So it's going to be either a type of failure or string, okay? String as a success because we're going to just send the user a message of success as a string. Essentially, it's going to be a post function. Just create the function here, handle login, and we're gonna have an email and a password, all right? And let's make the our required params. Okay, so the next step that we have to do is we have to create a entity. All right, so it's going to be a user entity. So for the user entity, I'm just going to copy and paste the entity that I already created here because I don't want to waste your time typing these values. These are just the values that we're going to use in our data. So you'll see right now here, and I'll walk you through that really quick. So we're gonna have an ID, an email, a name, last name, profile picture, you know, just the regular basic data types that a user has. And yes, so we also have to, since we're using a queryable, remember that you have to override, all right, the props, and then you're typing right here. Okay, so now that we are done with our domain layer, that's how I think it's the best practice to start with the domain layer, then you move on to the data. Now we can work on our data layer. All right, so let's create the folders really quick. We're gonna have a data source or models in a repository, and first let's create the model, and it's going to be exactly, basically the same thing. So we can just copy and paste. I'm gonna copy and paste the same one I used before, and it's going to extend our user entity. All right, now we're going to create, I'm just gonna really quick create the out repository implementation, and this is going to implement our original out repository, and this is going to be basically the entry point for our data and our domain. All right, but now we have to create our data source. Right, so let's create the class really quick, data source the dart. And first we have to create an abstract class which is going to inherit to our implementation. All right, so let's just create a function really quick. As you guys know, it's going to be a future returning a string. It's going to be called handle login, basic string, email, and password. Okay, and then we have to create another class, the implementation, that will inherit our function, and this is where we are going to write our logic. Okay, so let's override the changes right here. Let's save the changes, and here I'm really quick just going to type our URL. It's going to be just type that really quick right here, have it ready for later. We're going to import our first external package. It's going to be HTTP as HTTP, and you can implement and inject the package in our class right here. Let's create a constructor and let's make it require. Okay, guys. Alright guys, so let's create our function. So we're gonna type HTTP response is going to await our HTTP post request. Okay, so we have to parse the URI first. So URI.parse, and here is where we are going to inject our URI. Alright, so the next thing, we have to type our headers, and it's going to be content type application headers.json. And the char set is going to be UTF-8. If you've done web development before, you're really used to those steps. So I don't think I really have to tell you that. So then And the body, we're going to send our encoded request. All right, so JSON encode, which we're going to send our email and our password. Next, we're going to check if the status code is 200. We're going to grab our user ID from the JSON response. All right, guys, so we have to destructure that. So it's going to come in a user object, and inside the object is going to be underscore ID. Since it's under underscore, if you work with mongoDB before, you probably know that mongoDB by default creates an underscore ID. So yes, it has to be this way. And then we are just going to return our token, because in the response we are also going to send a token from the backend. All right, and we're going to write that with Nodejs and Express. All right, so we haven't done that yet. Once we are done here, we are ready to test our functions, we're going to create the server, right? So in the meantime, just type return JSON response and the token. All right, FYI, we're also going to grab our user ID and save it in secure storage, because we're going to use it later as well. All right, so now we have to create an error. So in case we have a server exception, we can throw errors in our try and catch. So let me just create a class really quick. So now we're going to be able to call our server exception on our throw. All right, so we can go back to the repository implementation, and the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to import our data source here and create a constructor. Now we can finish our function. Let's just create a try and catch, which is going to have an error. It's going to be asynchronous, and we're going to have a response, which is going to call our data source handle login. All right, so on server exception we can return left. All right, so we're going to just return the server failure that we created before, and on right just send the response. Now we can come back to our login use case, and we can finally import the repository, and then we're gonna have access to the function, of course. So here, let's just make a require, and here let's override our function and await the repository and inject the handle login function, and use the params to access the email and the password. Now that we're done, let's go to our presentation and start working on the UI and our blocks. All right, so I'm just going to use a shortcut. So here I'm just going to use the shortcut for block. So just right click and create block. All right, I'll start working on the auth state, and we're just gonna have two, which is gonna be authenticated and unauthenticated. And we're gonna use these to display either if the user has logged in or not. So let's work on our events. Our first event when we start the app is gonna be app started. Then we're gonna create a login event, which is going to, all of them are going to extend the main auth event. And in the login, we're gonna expect a token, an email, and a password, right? And I'll show you how to work with those values later. Let's override the props and inject them. Now let's create another very important state, which is which is logout. And now let's go back to our out block, and here let's inject super. It means it's going to be the default state, so unauthenticated, right? And here let's inject our use case. Now we have to just require it and inject it double times here. All right, 2 times. So on app started is gonna be our first function that we're going to work. All right, so this is going to, on app started event, we're going to emit this function. All right, so I hope it makes sense like by that. Now let's go back, because we're going to need a storage. So let's go back to our leave, create a config file, and let's create a singleton, which is going to be our storage. And here we're going to be using Flutter secure storage for these. It's better practice to use Flutter secure storage to store things such as tokens. So yeah, let's use. So now that we're done, let's just go back to our block, and let me show you how we're going to access this class, and we're going to save our token. All right, so this is going to be our function, which is going to expect the token, and that's what we're going to save. And secure storage, all right, and just name it token, and we have to create another one for delete and to get the token. So yeah, let's just watch me how I do it in screen right now. And get token is going to get a string, all right, which can be null if there's no token. All right, so this is how we're going to use this. We're going to create a token here, and we're going to await and get the token with the function that we just created. So if there's no token, if token is equal to empty, we're going to emit authenticated, and otherwise we just emit unauthenticated and send the user to the login page. Same with login, we have to make an asynchronous function, and we're going to have the email and password from the event, all right? And the token, this is our response that we're going to save right now. It's going to come from our use cases, okay? So let me just copy that right here. As I told you before, this is how we access the params. And just inject the email and the password. Now we can fold the token and we can send the token, all right? So we just call it TK and emit the new state. Now let's go to views and create our login screen so we can start creating our block here. So login screen, we have to import all the necessary package. So let's create a scaffold, a body here with a column. We can wrap this inside the padding, and we have to create the text editing controllers as well. So we're gonna need two, one for email and one for password. I'm just keeping it simple. I'm not gonna do any type of verification on the form. So yeah, I just wanna mainly focus on block state management and connecting our app with our backend, okay? Now import the login screen in our main so we can see the changes that we're gonna see. Now we can create the text, and then we're going to create a text button. So now we created these fields, and we're creating a size box really quick to separate that from our elevated button. And here's where we're going to call our context, all right, and call and sign in the user. Now let's refactor our material app, and we're going to import our block provider. All right, so this is how we access our block. And we also have to create our injection container, which we're going to just call all of our dependencies, all right? So here, we're gonna be using getX for this. So just watch me how I call the injections here from the block. So as you guys see, I have to register our use case or repository, and we also have to register the data source, and also we're gonna have to register the external package that we are using. So in this case is HTTP. So just call the service locator, register the lazy singleton, and call the package HTTP. So just remember, register factory for blocks, and the lazy singleton is going to be used for the rest of the classes. It's just that simple pattern. Then we're going to go back to our main.dart, import or injection container, and in the main function we're going to call the function. All right, so now we can just call our service locator and inject our block, and it's simple like that. Then you don't have to call all the dependencies from the classes. So now that everything's ready in our front end to sign in, we're going to go ahead and create our Nodejs server. So let's open the terminal, create a new folder, and navigate to this folder and just call npm init to create a new package.json. All right, and let's import everything that we need. So the first is the node is gonna be our dev dependency. So yeah, and let me configure the scripts and the start. really quick. So you're gonna type start, then node server with nodemon, and in the end you have to add another line, nodemon server.js, right? Now let's install the rest of the dependencies. We're gonna use, as you see in screen, Express, JSON Web Tokens, UUID, Molter to handle our files, .mb, course, and bcrypt. All right. So these are the basic packages that we're gonna use. Now we also gonna use AWS S3 to work as a middleware between our server and our applications. So every time our API receives an image or a file, it's going to access AWS. We're going to connect Node.js with AWS, and we're going to send and store all of our images right there, right? And when we call the get functions for any specific type of data, we are going to access the AWS console, and we're going to access our docs. All right, so let me just show you later how we do that. So let's create the controllers, middleware, models, and routes, and let's start working on our server here. So the first things, we're gonna do a couple of imports, .mb and express, and call our express app. Now we can call our server and see it's running. We can create our .env, and we have to install mongoose, right? So we're gonna start working on our database. Import mongoose. So const mongoose require mongoose. And mongoose, and then we can call the mongoose object and connect. All right, so I think first we have to create a URL and the port that we're going to be using, and I'll show you right now in a second how we do it. All right, so let me just open the browser. So this is our admin project section, and here just go to new project and create a new project. All right, and click build a database. So now let's just copy this link and let's go back to our server, and we have to paste our password. All right, so that's why I said you have to remember the password, and just finish this document. All right, so we can keep working on our server, and let's call the port where mongoose can connect, and it's going to be process env port. All right, or just the same port. Like you could use a different port here in case the other one is not working. So process.env, let's call our URL and inside this object, and then we can call our asynchronous call. So then, and just call the app object and listen. All right, so listen to a port, and let's call something that gives us a heads up, so porter, and let's catch in case there's any errors, and just print the error on screen so we can debug the application in case of errors. All right, now we're gonna create a user schema. We're gonna fill the fields. We need an email, a password, last name, name. We have to make this one a default, which is gonna have another one. It's gonna have which is gonna be a string by default. Let's create stamps as well so we can see the data this model or user is created. And then finally you have to export. So model the exports and export the user with the user schema. Right? We can go back to our controllers now and finish our login handle function, since we can call our user. So our const user is going to be equal to require. We also going to need JSON Web Tokens, so mbcrypt to encrypt our password every time that we logged in. All right, let me create the handle register as well so we can export it, and we're gonna need a try and catch. So in case of errors, we're gonna call rest status 500 for an error or server error, and we can print the error on the console, okay, and send it as JSON. So the first thing is that we're going to destructure the email, the password, the name, the last name from the body. Then we have to use the package bcrypt to encrypt our password, right? So this is just, I just copied it from the documentation. You basically grab the hash password, and then you will send that hash password to the user in mongoDB, all right? Just like I'm doing it in screen. And finally, you have to save. All right, so new user to save, and then you can send the 201 created to the front end. Let me just export the handle register right here. Now we need to create the route. So we are first going to go to Express and require Express. We also need the router in order to inject that into our server. We're going to use the router and create our register endpoint. Okay, now we can go back and inject that here. So everything we're just gonna have one controller and one route, and it's gonna be API, and then we're gonna separate those routes, all right? So here I forgot to module exports the router, otherwise it won't work. So yes, once we have that, we can go to Postman, and we're going to test this endpoint and see if everything's working. So let me just type really quick inside an object of JSON. We are going to need to test if everything's working. So as you see, I try to send information without any data and it doesn't work. So perfect. So now let me just type inside here. We are going to need an email. So we can either say, so we're going to name it foo, so foo@email.com, and the password is going to be hello world, all right? We're going to need a name, which is going to be food, and another last name, which is going to be Smith, okay? I'm just making up these values as I go along. All right, so now you guys can see that we were able to log in and we have the information here in MongoDB, which is perfect. This is all we need. Now we can go ahead and test our login function. So let's just go back here and start working on the handle login. Now we are going to do the same steps. We need a try and catch, and in case of error, we have to send a 500 error to the front end. In this case, we're only going to need the email and the password, so it's simpler. And then we have to call our MongoDB and use the find one function. All right, so the first thing that matches to our email will be the user that we are requesting. In case that there's no email, we will send a 400 request, which is just gonna say the user doesn't exist. And if it's a match, we have to decrypt the password. All right, so we need to call our package one more time and decrypt the current encrypted password with our original password. All right. In case the password doesn't match, we just send an error one more time. Now we need our JSON web tokens, because in every login we are going to create a token and we are going to store it in our front end. Okay. So here we need to create this password. This has to match, all right, because it's going to verify the password every time that we access our server. And if everything's right, we can send the status code to 100. Okay, so we're gonna use a console log in case we need to debug this application, all right, so we can see everything, all the information that we are getting from the front end. Now we have to just go here to our routes and register our login route. So just remember, everything starts with API, and then we are going to endpoint. So here we just have to change the register to login. This is going to be a JSON, and we're going to use our actual user, which is going to be full email, and this is the password, hello world. Let me just change the endpoint right here, and as you see, we receive a user and a token. Okay, a user object with the information and a token. All right. Okay, guys. So now we can go back to our front end, and we are going to test the application from here. So yes. So here in our elevated button, we're going to call our context, and it's going to be context.read. We have to export that from Flutter block, and then we have to inject our out block and then call our function here. All right. One thing, we don't need the token. I think I have to change this token to a default value. Sorry about that. Okay, now that once that's ready, I want to see if everything works. So we are going to wrap our home in a block consumer, all right? And we are going to check whether we have authentication, we are authenticated or not, all right? So we're gonna use a builder and a listener, and in the builder, we're going to check if the state is authenticated. We're going to just send the text widget, all right? But I'm just gonna create a screen later, so we can have our logout function as well. And just as you see in the screen, if it's unauthenticated, we can return our login screen, all right? It's that simple. And in case of any other errors, we are just going to send an empty container, all right? But I guess I can put the login screen here. It doesn't have to be a constant, and yes. So this is going to be the check for our navigation. I'm not using any package for routing, just to keep it simple and focus on block and on the backend. But yes, this is how we are going to handle this right now. And now we have to create to our block, we're going to create our logout function, because I need to just delete the token that we store here and then call our delete token function. All right, and then emit the state. Let me go to our folder feed, and in views we have to create another folder, and this is going to contain our main screen. All right, so I'm going to create my tabs, my bottom tabs here in a couple of seconds. So let me just import all the required packages, and let me just type an elevated button here and log out. Yes, so this is where we are going to navigate in case that we have authentication. So now inside here we can call our function. All right, so in out block we can call our logout function. All right, it's that simple. This is like basically how you glue together the presentation with the block and the UI. All right, now we are going to try to log in here, and let me put the right password. And as you guys see, everything works. As you guys see, once you log in, we receive the information. As you see in the terminal here, we get a token and a user object, and we are immediately moved to our authentication main screen. All right, because the state in the block changes. All right, this is how you basically do it. Once you get used to the syntax, it's really good. So now I think we can, one other thing that we have to do is we have to store the user ID at the time of logging in. So let me just create this function really quick, save user ID, and inject it here before we save our token as well. So now we can go back to our block, and let me create another one, which is going to be delete user ID, because we're going to use that as well in our logout function. Just like we delete our token, we're going to delete the user ID, because we're going to use that user ID to call data in our backend. All right, so once I log out, and let me log in here and test, as you guys see here, everything works. Now let me go to my main screen, and I'm gonna make it a stateful widget, because we're going to convert this into navigation tabs. So we're gonna have a selected index, which is gonna be equal 0. So the default screen is gonna be the first one. The next thing is that we have to create a list of widgets. All right, the widget options, and inside here just type the amount of screens or widgets that you want to display. In this case, we will only have two, the feed screen and also the post screen. Then we need a function which is going to change the state. All right, so in selected state is going to change to the index that is selected, like that. And then inside the scaffold we have an option which is called the bottom navigations bar, right? But just before that, in the center widget, because we have to display the widget, so call the elements add function and display the selected index. And then the bottom navigation bar is going to have a bottom navigation items. All right, so first let's just fill out the information that we need: the selected index, the function on top, the icon is going to be 30, the navigation bar is going to be fixed, so it doesn't move on change. 2 navigation bars, let's reset everything, and as you guys see, everything works nice. Everything's working smoothly here. Now we're gonna create a widgets, and we're also gonna need a feed screen in order to display our post. So let me create a stateful widget, and it's gonna be called feed screen. Let me import the necessary dependencies, and inside here, instead of just displaying a text, we can display our feed screen. In our feed screen, we're going to create a drawer. So let me just put a drawer, and it's gonna have a list view of child. Let me put the children here of the list view. We need a navbar first, of course, in order to display that. And inside here, let's start to decorate our UI a little bit. So our app is it starts to come together, and we see the design here. So we need a list style, and first I'm going to simulate the icon that you have here in LinkedIn. So it's gonna be just an icon person here instead of a profile picture. It's gonna be a size of 70, and for the trailing, so the icon, I guess we don't need the trailing, just like that. Now we're gonna create another list style, and we're gonna display the name here. Let's wrap that in a padding so it's aligned with our icon. So let me just do symmetric horizontal here, and and it can be 10 value. So yes, like that, it's more symmetric. Now we're gonna create a column below that, and inside here we're gonna have a text button, and this is gonna be your logout button. All right, so we can put a logout function here. Let me wrap this in a padding so it has a little bit more space. Let me make these constants above. Let me make these widgets constants. And inside here, we are going to call our context is going to be read. Remember, you always have to import Flutter block and call our out block. Okay, so our authentication block, and call a function from inside here. So every time that you click, it's gonna automatically log out. Let's try and test our application one more time, and as you guys see, we have a working authentication system with Flutter and Nodejs. Pretty cool, right? Now we're gonna work on our team, so let me create a team folder and a team manager here, and we're gonna create our class, which is gonna be our team service. You have to make sure you have provider. I was just making sure here because we're gonna use change notifier. So first, let's create a static string team key, which is gonna save our key. Now we have to create, next thing that we have to do is we have to create a toggle team. All right, so this function is going to change the value that's selected. All right, so we're gonna have Dart theme as default. I like Dart theme, and we have to check if the Dart theme is not Dart theme. We're going to notify our listeners. The next step that you have to do is you have to call your constants, your team constants. So here's where we are going to specify how our team is going to look depending of bright or dark. Now we have to first wrap our material app with a change notifier provider, and inside here we're going to provide our class. All right, so we can have access to our team. Now we can wrap our child or material app with a consumer as well, and here we're going to be able to access our team. Now we have access to our team, so we can check if our team is dark. We're gonna select our team or light team. All right, so let's make the condition here. Now we can go back and let's access our toggle function. So we have to create just a button. It's going to be here in our app bar from our feed, and inside here let's create an icon button, and we have to wrap the icon button in our consumer widget in order to access our provider. All right, so we are going to need a builder, which is going to have our context, our team, and inside our return we're going to return our child icon button, and we're gonna have a condition on the button. If it's dark, we're going to display a dark theme, otherwise it's going to be a sunny, so just a sun. So now we have to test. I think we have to refresh the application. First, I think before I'm gonna work on our constants here. So if it's our light theme is going to be bright and our dark theme is going to be bright as the dark. Okay. So if I refresh the application right here, since our application is dark by default, it's going to change to black, as you guys see. And inside here, I forgot to call our button. I forgot to call our toggle team button function, so it has to be inside our icon button. All right, so inside here now, as you guys see, I click and the theme changes automatically to either white or black, which is perfect. Now I'm going to start working on our post model. All right, so because we are going to start working on our post feature, so import mongoose as before. Let's create a post schema, and we have to create some values and some fields. All right, so the first thing that we're going to need is the owner ID, which is going to be a string. It's going to be required. Let's copy these a couple of times here and create the other values. We're going to have a description. We're going to have a name, a last name, which is going to be the user that owns the post name URL, and the AWS URL. I'll show you right now how we work with these values, but basically every time that we work with AWS, we have to provide a name URL that we are going to create, and with that name URL is how we fetch the actual URL that's stored in AWS, and that's how we display the pictures. All right, I'll show you that when we create our function after this, but that's basically how you do it. You need two links, the name URL and the actual URL. We have to, don't forget to export the values here, and inside here let's import our post model because we need this in order to save our data to Mongoose. Now let's import AWS packages. We need the S3 client. We need the put object command and the get object command in order to to create things in our database. We also need our UUID package to create unique strings. In order to work with AWS S3, you need the bucket name, the bucket region, the access key, and the secret access key. So we're gonna store all these values in our .env. I'll show you how you get these values right now from the console. So let me just copy and paste this really quick. Now that we are done with our imports, we can create our function. So let's create, and it's going to be an asynchronous function. So the first thing that we're going to check is if we don't have a description in the body or an owner ID. The next thing, we have to wrap everything in a try and catch block in order to catch our errors efficiently. So this params object is what we are going to use to send to AWS. We need the bucket, which is our bucket name. We need the string, which is going to be the name of the file that we're going to store. The request file, the buffer is the actual file, the raw file that we sent in our API request, and the content type is going to be mime.type. All right. Finally, we can call our S3 object and send the command. All right. Next, we have to work with mongoDB, and here we have to create a new object and inject the necessary values. So the name and the last name we're just testing right now. So let's put a default so we don't have to call our user to, and let's put the owner ID here, which is going to be the request coming from the request, and the post name URL is going to be our image string. All right, so this is going to match with our AWS database or bucket, and then send the request as a 201. So we're going to do that in a second. In our AWS, we need to get this information. Let me walk you through this function really quick. It's gonna start with a try and catch, and the first thing that we have to do is we have to call our mongoDB database and find the post. So all of the posts first. So just and wrap that, and if we don't have any posts, we're gonna do a really quick check. We're just gonna send that 204, which is gonna be for post or request not found. Then we have to loop really quick through our post. All right, and in that loop, that's where we are going to inject the values, which are gonna come from, the values, the image for each post, which is gonna come from AWS. So we have to create an object. We have to specify the bucket name and then the post name URL. So for each post is going to grab the matching name URL from AWS, and then we can call our get object command and inject this object. And inside here we have to create our URL, so get the signed URL and inject the necessary information, which is our S3 or command. And this is optionally. You can put an expire date. I'm just gonna put this date really quick, but you don't have to do that. And then we're going to attach the URL to our AWS URL. All right, so we have access to that in our front end. Make sure you export the function, and inside here, let me copy and paste. We need Molter as well in order to handle our files. So you need to import Molter here and then call our Molter memory storage, because I'm just gonna store everything in memory, not in the file system. And then call or upload middleware. All right, and inside the middleware we have a function which is going to call our single image. That image is the name of the image that you're sending. All right, so it's always going to be image by default, and then put the middleware in the route that you want to use it. So in this case we're going to use it in create post. So guys, the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a bucket. So go ahead to create bucket in S3, and let's name the bucket. You need the bucket name and the bucket region. These are the first two fields that we're going to use in our server. So please remember these fields. So now that we have our bucket, the next thing that we need is we need two things. We need a user to access this bucket, and we need a policy. So let's create our policy. We're going to select our servers, which is going to be S3. We need the write and put object resources. So the next thing that we need is we need to create a user, and this user is going to have access to these policies, to attach policy and look for the policy that we're going to use, which is going to be this one, or unique policy. Then select next. I think we don't need anything else. Just one thing in our user David, you need to create or last two fields for our server to access this bucket, which is going to be the access key in the private access key. In our .bnb, just copy and paste these access keys, and the bucket name and region bucket name you're gonna find them right here, right? So I think that was everything with our AWS configuration. So we can go back to our front end and start working on our functions to retrieve or appropriate data.
this ride, feeling alive. Nothing in sight, forever in flight. Follow those lines, we'll make it this time. Blurry street lights, work as a guide to memories that we're making tonight. Oh yeah, we'll make it tonight. Yeah, I'll do anything that I feel like I wanna do. I'm living life like I got nothing left to prove. No end in sight, just always staying on the move. I'll go all night if that's just what I gotta do. Life's too short to care about what you can't afford. Memories are in what you explore, so just don't be ignored. Go ask for more, go ask for more. 'Cause I've been living life right like I could just die any minute. Going for a ride down the side, PCH, country limit. I don't need a guide, follow lights, take me where I wanna visit. Are you alive? I'll just breathe in. 'Cause I've been living life right like I could just die any minute. Going for a ride down the side, PCH, country limit. I don't need a guide, follow lights, take me where I wanna visit. Are you alive? I'll just breathe in. I'm in a race that everybody's chasing fast. They wanna be that someone on the screen at last. They ain't looking inside for their needs in life. They wanna be liked by everybody in sight. But trust me, being free ain't spotlights. No, it's long nights and it's long fights with yourself all the time to get your mind right. But if you put in the work, you can find the light, alright. I'll do anything that I feel like I wanna do. I'm living life like I got nothing left to prove. No end in sight, just always staying on the move. I'll go all night if that's just what I gotta do. Life's too short to care about what you can't afford. Memories are in what you explore, so just don't be ignored. Go ask for more, go ask for more.